There is a fear that's spreading fast in retirement circles that if you don't act now, taxes will explode in retirement and you will be left holding the bag. And that fear is driving retirees into Roth conversions at a pace that we've never seen before. But what if I told you that parties might be trying to manipulate you with fear into making Roth conversion decisions that are not truly in your best interest? In today's video, we're going to unpack why the future of tax rates is far from certain and why fear-based advice should raise red flags and how to determine if a Roth conversion is actually worth exploring based on your specific wealth level. I'm a certified financial planner and I've worked with dozens of families from all walks of life. I've seen firsthand how much confusion and misinformation surrounds the dreaded tax bomb, especially when it comes from those with something to sell. And so we're going to break down how tax fear-mongering leads retirees astray, who actually benefits from Roth conversions and who doesn't, and the hidden motives behind why this advice is everywhere right now. So let's dive in. The problem with Roth conversions isn't the tool itself. It's how fear is weaponized to push it as a universal fix for taxes in retirement. You've likely heard phrases like, taxes have nowhere to go but up, or Roth now or regret it later. But the thing to do is to stop and ask, are those things actually true? According to polling done by the Pew Research Center in March 2025, 56% of participants said they feel they already pay more than their fair share of taxes. Now, that same study found that while the general public tends to support higher taxes on corporations and the wealthy, they would not be willing or interested in supporting tax hikes for themselves. And that's part of why there is no political consensus that taxes will rise significantly. In fact, respected sources like the Congressional Budget Office and the Brookings Institute previously projected that if the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act expired in 2025, then revenue gains would be mostly automatic, not driven by deliberate tax hikes. That's no longer just speculation, because as of making this video, the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which makes the Trump-era Tax Cuts and Jobs Act tax cuts permanent, the scenario of expiring lower brackets is now off the table. So the taxes are just permanently lowered unless that gets changed under the next administration. And so what does this mean? The political path of least resistance, which is extending tax cuts and expanding deficits, has officially become policy. It's not just officially become policy, it's actually been policy now for the last 15 years. Analysis from the Penn, Wharton, and the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget warned that this would push U.S. debt to unprecedented levels, and yet Congress still moved forward on this anyways, signaling that protecting current tax rates is actually their top priority, even if it balloons debts and deficits. And polling from Pew and Cato reinforced this trend. Americans support taxing corporations and high earners, but are strongly opposed to across-the-board tax hikes. This means that if rates do rise in the future, increases will likely be marginal, right? Perhaps going from 37% at the top marginal bracket to 39%, and will really only target the wealthiest Americans. And for most retirees, the likelihood of facing steep tax hikes is extremely low because most retirees aren't in those top marginal brackets. Now, this fear, right, that your personal tax liability in retirement could become a retirement-ending tax bomb is often fueled not by reality, but by advisors who benefit from it, right? They want to push you into a series of actions, often because they want your business. And the Roth conversion pitch is the perfect tool, right? It's emotionally compelling, it's fear-based, it's urgent sounding, but it's actually far from universally beneficial. And so let's talk about the basics here. Taxes will likely be your biggest expense in retirement. There is no hiding that, but there is no magic tax solution. Converting to a Roth only makes sense under specific conditions, and understanding when those conditions apply is the real solution. It's not the Roth conversion itself, it's understanding when those conditions would apply. Now, the best way to visualize those conditions is to break retirees down by wealth level into 3 different categories. The first category are retirees with less than $500,000 in assets. Now, this category makes up 91% of the US retiree population. So by far, the majority of the retiree population. And for most people in this specific wealth tier, Roth conversions are never the answer. You will almost never benefit unless you have an unusually high blend of guaranteed income sources, things like high Social Security benefits paired with one or maybe multiple pensions, and maybe even including reliable income from syndicates, rental property, or limited partnerships. Now, if you are in that small percentage of retirees, you have $500,000 in retirement savings, but you also have substantial guaranteed income sources, then just follow this checklist to determine if Roth conversions would be worth exploring. 1, do you expect your total guaranteed income in retirement to exceed your pre-retirement income? If the answer is yes, then go and model a Roth conversion. It doesn't mean do it. It means go look into it. And if the answer is no, then you can probably avoid conversions and they will likely be a net negative for you over your retirement lifespan. The second category of retirees are what we call middle wealth retirees, and those are retirees with between $500,000 in assets and $5 million in assets. Now, this group makes up 9% of the US retiree population. Here's where nuance is key. You may benefit in this category, but again, only under very specific conditions. You would have to have a gap retirement period. So that would be the period of time after you're done with work, but before other income sources kick in, like Social Security or pensions. And this gap period would have to be possible for you to live on after-tax money and therefore keep your taxable income low, all without having a major quality of life reduction, right? So that's a big ask and that's a hard needle to thread, which is why it applies to a very small proportion of people. The second criteria in this category would be that not only do you have that gap retirement income period, but you would also be able to pay the tax on the conversions using after-tax money, because that would keep your pre-tax distributions lower and therefore your taxable income and therefore your tax bracket lower, right? Again, these are very, very nuanced and niche criteria, and they're not going to apply to even a very small percentage of the 9% of people who are in this $500K to $5 million wealth level. The third criteria in this middle wealth level would be that you're preparing for future tax disadvantages. So those would be things like widow or widower tax penalties, because you go from married filing jointly brackets to single filer brackets. This would include maybe the possibility of having a really large increase in your Medicare IRMA surcharges after required minimum distributions begin. And if you're in that small percentage of retirees that fits all three of those criteria and has those tax disadvantages that you're trying to plan for in the future, then you're going to want to follow this checklist. Do you have a prepayment buffer of after-tax money to live off of during your gap period? Can you retire early enough to create that gap period before Social Security or pensions kick in? And then are you actually a candidate where widow penalties would be a risk due to the difference in age of the spouses in your family? And then finally, would IRMA or RMDs push your taxable income into a much higher bracket and therefore your Medicare surcharges? Now, only with most of those aligned does a Roth conversion in this middle wealth segment make sense. Now, the third and final wealth level that we're going to talk about are the high wealth retirees, and those are retirees with $5 million or more in assets. This group makes up 0.2% of the US retiree population. And in this case, conversions are almost always advantageous here. And it's not only for personal tax savings, it's also because there are significant estate planning benefits. These retirees are already likely going to be in the highest tax bracket in retirement because the combination of interest and income from dividends from that pool of assets above 5 million likely already pushes you into a significant tax bracket. Then they also have these large portfolios that could trigger significant taxable events because of RMDs. And then finally, this high wealth bracket, they can simply afford to pay the cost of the Roth conversion and absorb the increase in withdrawal rates that are part of that as a way to soften the tax blow to their heirs and simplify their estate planning. And so whether you're in the majority of retirees who should likely avoid Roth conversions, or you're among the few for whom it may actually make sense, the key takeaway is this: Roth conversions are a strategic tool. They are not a default move, and their value depends entirely on your specific financial landscape. And so instead of defaulting to fear, your strategy should be, 1, to identify your wealth tier. So where do you fall within those wealth levels? Number 2, check the relevant bullet list that we just talked about before, whether those things in that checklist applies to you even when you're in those wealth tiers. And then number 3, explore Roth conversions thoughtfully only if those checklist items align. Now, in a world where fear sells and simple always seems better, right? Simple like tax-free money in retirement. That sounds simple, but in actuality, it's not. It's more important than ever to pause, to analyze, and to plan deliberately. Roth conversions can be a powerful lever, but only in the right hands and under the right conditions. And so hopefully this video helps provide you the tools to think clearly about your own situation. And so as we wrap up today, if you're wondering whether a Roth conversion actually makes financial sense for your situation, because we didn't really talk about the math on Roth conversions in this video. I did another video recently called Roth Conversion Lies All Retirees Believe, and you can watch that video by clicking this card up above here. That video digs deeper into the math, the myths, and the truths about who actually financially benefits from Roth conversions. And also, if you'd like to learn more about how we at Peak Financial Planning help our clients fully optimize their retirement plans and achieve their spending goals, you can click the first link in the description below this video to watch a longer, more detailed webinar I've put together for you guys. At the end of the day, there are no shortcuts in retirement planning and certainly no one-size-fits-all tax strategies. And so the next time someone tells you that you're missing out on the final opportunity if you don't convert now, just take a pause. Ask yourself, who benefits? Because your retirement deserves more than fear-based advice. It deserves clarity, logic, and a plan that is built around and for you. And so with that said, thank you as always for your time and attention. I will see you in the next video.